I didn't notice her at first. Not really. Just the way you don't notice a clock until it ticks too loud, or a window draft until you're standing in it. She was always just there, next door, watering the plants too early in the morning, carrying groceries with that careful precision like she was measuring her strength. My girlfriend's older sister. Mid-40s, maybe. She carried herself like someone who'd lived long enough to get tired of unnecessary talk. The first time we spoke, it was nothing. Morning. Morning. That was it. But it sat with me. The truth was, I'd been lonely in a way that wasn't about being single. My phone was always at 10% from scrolling, but my texts stayed unsent. I'd type out something to friends, "You up?" or "Want to grab coffee?" Then delete it before sending. Even with my girlfriend, half the things I wanted to say felt stuck somewhere behind my teeth. So when her sister actually remembered, that I liked my coffee with a dash of cinnamon, it hit harder than I expected. We were standing in line at the small cafe on the corner. She ordered hers, turned slightly, and said, "And he'll have the usual, with cinnamon." I blinked. "You remember that?" Her shrug was quick, almost dismissive, but her eyes stayed on mine longer than they needed to. "You always get it. People aren't that hard to read." I laughed, though it came out softer than I meant. "Guess I'm predictable." Predictable isn't always bad. And just like that, my morning coffee wasn't just caffeine anymore. It was something else entirely. It wasn't the big things. It was the micro moments that hooked me, even when I didn't want to be hooked. Like the way she pushed her glasses up her nose when she was thinking, or how she folded her napkin into smaller and smaller squares without realizing it, or how she'd pause in the middle of a sentence, letting silence do half the work. One night, I saw her through the thin blinds of her kitchen window, sitting at the counter with her hair tied loosely, a half-empty glass of wine in front of her. She wasn't doing anything, just looking at her phone, unread messages lighting the screen. The glow touched her face in a way that made her look both younger and lonelier than I'd ever noticed. I told myself to look away, but I didn't. The thing about attraction is that it creeps up sideways. You never admit it when it starts. You just notice. You notice how she leans closer when she speaks, how her perfume lingers after she's gone. You notice your girlfriend talks fast and leaves the room, but her sister talks slow and waits for your answer. I caught myself thinking about her more than I should have. About her quietness. About how she seemed to notice things I thought were invisible. And then, that night, it happened. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, debating another text I'd never send, when it lit up. A new message. Not from my girlfriend. From her. "You're awake, right?" My chest tightened, like I'd been caught. My thumb hovered over the screen. Another message followed, this one slower, almost daring. "Don't pretend you haven't wanted this." I stared at the words until the clock on my nightstand ticked over to the next minute. My throat felt dry. My hands wouldn't stay still. Outside, I thought I heard movement through the wall. Or maybe it was my own pulse, too loud. All I knew was that my life, as quiet and predictable as it had been, suddenly wasn't anymore. The next morning, I couldn't stop hearing the echo of that text. "Don't pretend you haven't wanted this." I didn't answer. Not then. I set the phone face down, like covering it could undo what was already written. But silence was its own kind of answer, and I knew she'd read it that way. When I saw her later, outside, crouched by the small patch of flowers she always tended, the world didn't tilt dramatically. It was almost worse. She looked up, nodded, and said, "Morning," like nothing had changed. I bent down to tie my shoe, buying time. "Morning." The quiet stretched. Too loud, too long. Later that day, she knocked on my door. "Your girlfriend left her sweater at mine," she said, holding it up like proof. But she didn't leave right away. Instead, she stepped inside, eyes scanning my half-clean kitchen, the stack of dishes, the unopened mail. "You're not much for keeping up with things, are you?" "Guess not," I muttered, embarrassed. Without asking, she set the sweater down and rolled up her sleeves. "I'll help." I wanted to stop her, to insist she didn't need to, but watching her rinse a plate, sleeves pulled back, hair falling forward, it felt disarming. Too normal and too intimate at the same time. "You know," she said after a moment, "when I was your age, I lived in a place just like this. Kitchen even smaller. Except I had 2 roommates who never cleaned. I swore I'd never share space again." I glanced at her. "And you didn't?" Her laugh was short, dry. "No. Married too young instead." She didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. But the way she said it, half bitter, half tired, told me more than a story would have. For a second, I imagined her younger, standing in some cramped kitchen, sleeves rolled up, telling herself she'd chosen wrong but had to stay. The picture stuck in my chest. When she finished with the last dish, she leaned against the counter, drying her hands on a towel. The silence between us wasn't awkward this time. It was something heavier, like both of us were trying not to step onto thin ice we knew was already cracking. "You didn't answer me last night," she said finally. I swallowed. I didn't know what to say. Her eyes held mine, steady but softer than I expected. That's an answer. The weight of it sat there, filling the air. I wanted to say I hadn't stopped thinking about it, that I'd replayed her words until they felt like they were stitched into me. But instead, I picked at the corner of the table, avoiding her gaze. She let it go, or pretended to. "Tea?" she asked, changing the subject. We drank it at the table, steam rising between us. She stirred hers absent-mindedly, the spoon clinking against the cup, and for a moment I thought of leaning forward, closing the gap. Instead, I just watched the way her hand trembled slightly, like she wasn't as composed as she wanted me to believe. When she stood to leave, she touched my arm lightly, just her fingertips, brief, almost nothing. But it was enough to send a shiver down my spine, more lasting than a kiss would have been. "Don't let the dishes pile up again," she said, with a small smile that carried too much weight. And then she was gone, leaving the faint scent of her perfume behind, lingering like a question I wasn't ready to answer. It had been 3 days since the tea. 3 days of nods in the hallway, polite distance, and me pretending my pulse didn't pick up whenever I heard her door close. That night, I ran into her outside by accident, if it was an accident. She was locking her car, a grocery bag in one arm, her hair still damp from a late shower. "You're out late," I said, immediately regretting how casual it sounded. "So are you." She lifted the bag slightly, like proof. "Needed a few things." The silence after that was longer than it should have been. Neither of us moved. I noticed her hand tightening on the strap of the bag. My own stayed buried in my pockets, useless. Inside, when she asked if I could help carry the bag upstairs, I said yes too quickly. The apartment was dim, her kitchen light throwing soft gold across the counter. "Just put it down," she murmured. But I lingered, watched her take out each item carefully, like she needed the distraction of something ordinary. "You've been quiet," she said finally, not looking at me. "So have you." That earned me a small, crooked smile. Guess we're good at pretending. The words sat between us. Pretending. I wanted to tell her I hadn't stopped thinking about her, that her text had followed me into every room. Instead, I shifted my weight, leaned back against the counter. "You shouldn't," she started, then stopped, hands pressing flat on the counter. "I mean, this isn't," her voice trailed off. I could see the effort it took for her not to finish. Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. We both froze. Her younger sister's voice, my girlfriend's, floated through, cheerful, too close. "You home?" "Thought I left my charger." My chest tightened. She pressed a finger to her lips, eyes wide. I nodded. The silence was thick enough to choke on as she waited, then called out, "Yeah, just a second." She glanced at me, then the back hallway. I slipped into it without a word, my breath shallow. When the door finally closed again, I stepped out. My heart was still racing, but she looked calm, too calm, smoothing her shirt like nothing had happened. "She'll come by again if I don't find that charger," she said lightly, but her voice cracked halfway through. We stood there, the weight of almost being caught pressing down harder than any words could. I reached for the grocery bag on the counter, pretending to help, but my hand brushed hers. Just for a second. She didn't move it. Her eyes flicked to mine. The air shifted, close enough that I could see the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the way her breath caught. For half a second, I leaned in. And then, she pulled back. "Not much, just enough." "We shouldn't," she whispered, though her hand lingered on mine a moment too long before she finally let go. The space between us felt heavier than a kiss would have. It happened on a walk. Nothing planned. Just coincidence. Or maybe both of us had started circling the same hours without admitting it. She was coming back from the store. I was cutting through the block. We stopped at the small bench near the corner, the one facing the empty lot where grass grew too high. "You're out late again," I said. My tone sounded too careful. "You notice a lot of things," she replied, sitting down before I could. I joined her. The bench was narrow, wood-worn smooth. Our shoulders weren't touching, but close enough that I could feel the air shift between us. She was quiet for a while, watching the traffic lights cycle through even though no cars were coming. Finally, she said, "You shouldn't look at me the way you do." I laughed under my breath, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. "I don't, you do." She didn't turn, just kept her eyes on the empty street. "And I let you." The words sat heavy, heavier than if she'd shouted them. My chest tightened. "Do you want me to stop?" Her hands twisted together in her lap. She looked down at them, then finally at me. "That's not the question." The night pressed in around us. A moth flickered near the street lamp. Somewhere, a dog barked. All ordinary sounds, but everything felt sharpened, too sharp. "You're young," she said, almost like an accusation. "You have a whole life ahead of you. This, whatever this is, it doesn't end well." I swallowed, unsure if my voice would come out steady. "And you? You don't think about what you want." Her laugh was short, cracked. I stopped asking myself that a long time ago. Something in me broke a little at that. The way she said it, like someone who'd filed herself away in a drawer years ago. "I think about it," I said quietly. "I think about it all the time." That caught her. She turned to me, eyes searching, like she wanted to find a lie and couldn't. For a second, neither of us breathed. Her hand shifted, just slightly, resting on the bench between us. Open, not reaching, but not pulling away either. I stared at it, my pulse loud in my ears. "I shouldn't even be sitting here with you," she whispered. "But I am." I almost told her I'd been waiting for this, for her, to mean something. I almost leaned in. Almost. "Instead," I said, "then don't move." The words came out softer than I expected, pleading without meaning to. Her eyes closed for a beat too long. When she opened them, they were glassy, raw in a way I hadn't seen before. "I don't know if I can keep pretending," she said. And before I could answer, before I could touch her hand, close that last inch, she stood. The moment snapped, quiet but final, like a thread pulled too tight. "Good night," she murmured, walking away before I could move. The bench felt colder without her there. She didn't come by the next day, or the one after that. At first, I told myself it was chance, different schedules, missed timing. But by the fourth day, the silence had a shape to it. Intentional. I tried not to notice. Went to the cafe, lingered too long in the stairwell, even took out the trash at odd hours. But she was nowhere. And then, one evening, I saw her car wasn't in its usual spot. Hours later, headlights pulled in. She stepped out with someone beside her, a teenage girl, maybe 16. The resemblance was immediate. Her daughter. She didn't look over, didn't wave, just kept her hand gently on the girl's shoulder, guiding her upstairs. That explained the new distance, the sudden walls. Not just guilt, not just the age gap. There was more tethered to her than she'd ever said. I sat on my couch later, phone in hand. Typed. "Why didn't you tell me?" Deleted it. Typed again. "I get it. You don't owe me anything." Deleted that too. All that remained was the empty text box, the cursor blinking like it was mocking me. The next morning, I finally saw her outside. She was unloading groceries, her daughter holding one of the bags. I caught her eye for half a second. She looked away instantly. "Morning," I said. Too quiet. She didn't answer. The daughter glanced between us, curious, maybe suspicious. Then she nudged her mother gently, and they went inside. I stood there longer than I should have, hands shoved deep in my jacket, feeling like the whole street was watching me. That night, I caught myself replaying every detail differently now. Her hand trembling on the teacup, her half-smile at the counter, her whisper on the bench. I don't know if I can keep pretending. It wasn't just about me. It was about everything else she was carrying, the weight of a past I wasn't invited into. I wanted to knock on her door, just once, just to say I wasn't blind, that I could see her, but I didn't. Instead, I wrote, "I'm still here if you want me to be." My thumb hovered. The clock ticked. Midnight. Then 1. I never pressed send. The next morning, her blinds stayed closed. The bench at the corner was empty. The silence between our doors was louder than any argument could have been. And for the first time since it started, I wondered if maybe this was all it would ever be. Half-finished sentences, almost confessions, words swallowed back before they could land. I left the message in drafts. The screen went dark. The seat across from me stayed empty. It was raining when it finally broke. Not heavy, just the kind that taps against windows and makes the world move slower. I saw her struggling with her groceries at the bottom of the stairs. The umbrella balanced wrong in one hand, a bag slipping in the other. Before I could think, I was there. Let me help. She didn't protest, just handed me the bag, her fingers brushing mine for a second longer than needed. Neither of us spoke as we climbed. Inside her apartment, she set the umbrella aside, water dripping onto the mat. The room smelled faintly of tea and something baked earlier in the day. Her daughter wasn't home. "Thank you," she said, voice low. I nodded, put the bag on the counter, waited for her to dismiss me, to send me back to the safety of silence. But she didn't. Instead, she leaned against the counter, crossing her arms like she was holding herself in place. "You weren't supposed to see her. My daughter." I swallowed. I figured. She doesn't know anything about this. Her voice cracked on the last word, like she hated naming it. I didn't say anything. I know. The rain filled the space between us. "I've been trying to stay away," she admitted finally, her eyes on the floor. "But you make it harder than it should be." Something in me loosened. "You think it's easy for me?" Her gaze lifted then, sharp and unflinching. "You're 20. You'll get over me." I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat. "That's not how it feels." She studied me, like she was weighing the truth in my voice against the risk of believing it. Her hand twisted the dish towel on the counter. "You don't understand what it costs," she whispered. "Then tell me." For a long moment, she didn't. The rain pressed on, steady, like it was waiting too. Finally, she said, "It costs everything. My daughter, my sister, my peace." Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. "And still," I said, softer than I meant, "you're here, talking to me." The silence stretched, heavy but not unbearable this time. She let out a breath, the kind that sounded like surrender. "I hate that I look forward to seeing you," she confessed. "I hate that you notice the small things, that you remember." I wasn't supposed to want that again. My chest tightened. I didn't move closer, didn't touch her, just let the words sit. "Then don't pretend," I said gently. "Not with me." Her hand finally let go of the towel. It fell against the counter with a soft thud. She stepped closer, barely half a step, but enough. Her eyes searched mine, waiting, daring me to be the one to ruin it. I didn't. I just nodded, a small, quiet okay. She let out the faintest laugh, half broken, half relieved. And for the first time since it began, the space between us didn't feel like a wound. Time didn't stop after that night in her kitchen. It stretched on, ordinary as ever, folding us back into routines that looked the same from the outside. We didn't rush. There wasn't anything to rush toward. Instead, things shifted slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice at first. She still left for work at 8:47 a.m., keys jangling faintly as the door closed. I still found myself lingering by the window with my coffee, sometimes black, sometimes with that extra cinnamon she teased me about. Only now, when she caught me looking, she didn't look away. She just shook her head, amused, and let the moment hang. The bench became ours again. Some nights we sat there in silence, shoulder to shoulder, listening to the traffic hum. Other nights, she told me stories in fragments, about her daughter's first recital, about the year she almost moved cities but stayed because it was easier. I didn't press. I just listened, memorizing the way her voice dipped when she got tired, the way her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her sleeve when the memories got heavier. We fell into new patterns. Tea at her place after long days. My jacket left draped over her chair. Her grocery bags carried upstairs without needing to ask. None of it was dramatic. If anything, it was the opposite, quiet, deliberate, steady. She didn't try to name it. Neither did I. But I felt it in the way she let herself lean closer when she laughed, in how her hand would graze mine on the counter and linger just a second longer than necessary. There were still boundaries. She was careful. Around her daughter, around her sister, around anyone who might look too closely. Some days it stung, the distance she put back between us. Other days, it felt like part of the deal. I learned to hold both things at once, the wanting and the waiting. She let herself be softer with me in ways I knew cost her. One night, over cooling mugs of tea, she admitted, I didn't think I had it in me anymore. To let someone this close. I didn't answer with words. Just shifted my cup closer to hers until they touched. A small thing. Enough. Now, months later, I see her watering the plants at 8:47 a.m. sharp, hair pinned loosely, the same way she always has. I wave. She rolls her eyes but waves back, lips tugging into that private half-smile she never uses with anyone else. The world hasn't changed. Bills still come. Trains still run late. My phone still lights up with messages I never answer. But when she sets down 2 mugs of tea instead of 1, when she leans back on the bench with me at the end of another long day, when her hand finds mine, quiet and steady, I know life is different. Not perfect, just warmer. And it feels like something only the two of us could ever understand. Sparkle's engagement close. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?